20 drafts from 20 managers who finished inside the top 100 last year. In today's video, we are going to go through their drafts, look at their ownership percentages, talk about their chip strategies, and pull out a couple of drafts to see if there's anything we can learn to see what they're doing this season to maybe give ourselves a better boost for the start of the season. What is up, everyone? FPL Harry here. Before we dive in, 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you are new around here. And as I said in the intro, we've got something slightly different, something a little bit exciting. I've got 20 managers who all finished inside the top 100 of all of FPL last year. And we're going to pick apart their drafts, look at ownership percentages, talk about chip strategy, talk about squad structure as well. So let me know what you think of the idea. Hopefully we're going to update it slightly later on during preseason as well. Before we dive in and look at that, first of all, thank you to all 20 managers who sent it in. Very much appreciated, very helpful, very quick turnaround. So I appreciate all of you. If you want to follow them, all of their ats and where they finished overall are on screen now. And actually also a lot of the data that I will be using for my videos throughout the season, you will hear me talking about it, is from Fantasy Football Scout. But what we really need to talk about is they already have got a new points overall total that includes defensive contributions. I'm trying to see which defenders I want to pick or midfielders, and I can't because I'm trying to add defensive contributions to totals. Fantasy Football Scout have already got that in their members area now. It is 47% off. The link is in the description. You can go and check it out if you want. Anyway, let's dive in and look at some of these drafts from some of the best managers from last year's FPL. So before we actually go and have a look at any specific players, I did ask them all about chip strategy to try and understand where they might be looking to maybe use their first half of the season chips. Because of course we've got double chips now, and it's not just, I'll save everything towards the end of the season, apart from of course the first wildcard. We need to be using the chips where we think they're best in the first half, of course, and then we get the second half of the season chips. Now, only 1 in 3 of these managers plan on using a chip in the first 6 game weeks. Only one manager plans on using the bench boost in game week 1, and then there are quite a few wildcards making up some of that percentage in game week 4 and game week 6, and actually quite a lot of people mentioned to me, not in these percentages, about a game week 7 wildcard. Tends to be where there's a bit of an international break, there's a bit of a fixture swing going on there as well. So not really that many attacking chips in terms of free hit and bench boost being played. A couple of opportunities in game week 2 and 3 for the free hit, bench boost game week 1, but most people plan on saving those attacking chips and maybe just playing the wild card in the first 6 or 7 game weeks. Now to go on and have a look at what people are doing with their squad. So before we look at specific players, I think it's worth pulling out a little bit of squad structure stuff. A lot of people are playing a 3-4-3 at the moment, but I do think that might slightly start to change as we get closer to game week 1. But at the moment, the majority of these managers are playing a 3-4-3. 85% of managers have picked a 4 million goalkeeper, so only 15% have decided to rotate goalkeepers. Most of us are just opting for a set and forget goalkeeper at the moment. 65% have picked a 4.5 million mid. That's what we're seeing. Most people going with that cheap midfielder in that 5th spot to go with a big 3 up front. Now, some of them are not doing this. That is partly because they are going with a cheap forward, but also some people are going for a 5.5 million midfielder as their 5th midfielder, just so they can rotate it into the starting 11. But looking at their drafts again, the majority are going with a 3-4-3. Again, looking at the cheap defenders, 55% have a 4 million defender, and a Steve of Burnley is the number 1 pick that they are going with at the moment. There are a few Sunderland defenders creeping in. Yeah, a lot of people going with that, but that's actually lower than we've seen in previous seasons. People are looking at the defensive contribution points and starting to think that 5th defender might be slightly more valuable than your 5th midfielder, for example, and maybe upgrading it to a 4.5 million defender as an example. And then the final one is the 4.5 million forwards. Virtually no one is going with them at the moment. Again, just highlighting 3-4-3 is the most favorable option and formation at the moment. The other question I did ask was Gyökeres and Alexander Isak. Gyökeres, of course, signed for Arsenal, and Alexander Isak potentially rumoured to be leaving Newcastle. 70% of managers in that group said that they would likely change their drafts once Gyökeres got added, or if Alexander Isak was to leave Newcastle. So that could cause a big shape up. We are seeing a template form. When we look at some of the percentages we've got, there is definitely a template, but those 2 transfers, one confirmed and one rumoured at the moment, could definitely change the way things are looking. So to start having a look at some of the percentages, the 5 most owned players, let's see how many of you thought this would be the 5 most owned players. Mo Salah, Cole Palmer, Dominic Solanke, Ezri Konsa, and Iliman Ndiaye. 3 midfielders in there forming a very strong midfield template, 1 forward and then 1 budget defender. And then we can add in the full percentage list. We've got the top 24 percentages here. the most highly owned options in there. Again, Salah, Palmer, Solanke, Konza, Illiman and Dye are the top 5. We've got Wan-Bissaka, João Pedro, Chris Wood, Danny Welbeck, all high up there. Bukayo Saka, Gabriel also in at that 40% mark. A few of them just to pull out. I think Ollie Watkins and Morgan Rogers in at 30% is a nice differential. Less than one on average player out of those in people starting 11s at the moment. But the really interesting one, some of those cheaper midfielders in like Eze and Kudus, there's lots of differentiation in there if you're not going for Illiman and Dye. Of course, though, is Erling Haaland. Just 20%, 1 in 5 managers is going with Erling Haaland at 14 million, compared to 85% of them going with Mo Salah. There is a very strong Salah, no Haaland template going on at the moment with lots of those cheaper forwards, as we said, in the likes of Chris Wood, in the likes of João Pedro, Dominic Solanke and Welbeck taking up the forward spots. No space for Erling Haaland at the moment. So we're actually going to dive in and have a look at a couple of the drafts in isolation. The first manager we're going to look at is Kai over on Twitter. He finished 41st in the world this season. But not only that, he's played 6 full seasons of FPL and has finished inside the top 50k in every single one of those seasons. So not just 1 year of good rank, a long, good history of playing FPL. And also, he plans on bench boosting game week 1, wildcarding game week 4, which is why I think this draft is really interesting. We haven't spoken that much about a bench boost game week 1 or early wildcard strategy on the channel yet. We will have videos out on it, but it's interesting to look at what he's planning on doing with that potential setup. Number 1 is going with Verbruggen and another 4.5. He's actually gone with Patterson of Sunderland with a good fixture in game week 1. The key omission here is he is one of the managers who went with Erling Haaland and didn't go with Mo Salah. Having Mo Salah for the early 3 game weeks, if you plan on going with a game week 4 wildcard, is actually what people are looking to avoid. 3 difficult games in the first 3. Bournemouth at home on the opening day is not bad, but after that, the Newcastle in there as well. The fixtures are not great, so he's opted to go against Mo Salah in order to try and free up a bit of money to upgrade the bench. So you've got the likes of Gabriel, de Coupier, along with the strong defenders in Cucurella and the double Spurs in his starting 11, while still having a strong midfield. So you've got Wirtz to try and maybe cover off Mo Salah a little bit. Palmer, McNeil instead of Illiman and Dye because of the funds. Declan Rice because of the game week 2 Leeds fixture. Chris Wood, Haaland and Solanke. If you are planning an early wildcard in and around game week 4 and an early bench boost, for example, looking away from Mo Salah just because of those early fixtures is something you consider. It's not something I would do, but I'm not planning that early a wildcard. And it's interesting to see this is what a bench boost game week 1 team would start to look like. And there is definitely points on the bench there. And now moving on, we've actually got the world number 2, Jack Brenz has sent in his draft for us to have a look at. Now, this is a more typical draft of what we're being seen sort of sent around. And I actually have about a minute clip of Jack himself talking about this draft. So let's see what he's got to say.
Hello everyone, I'm Jack. I somehow managed to finish 2nd in the world last season. I'd like to thank Harry for giving me this opportunity to be able to share my first draft with you. To my took me quite a while to build something that I was somewhat remotely happy with. I think FPL really nailed the prices this year. So the first thing I've done this season compared to last season was just to completely cut down the funds in defence with only 1 expensive defender. Because with the new point system, I feel we'll probably find some gems that will consistently get those 2 points along with the clean sheet and who knows, the odd goal or assist. I've also gone with Salah, Saka and Palmer in midfield, which I haven't seen too many people with all 3 in their drafts, but it's probably just me with my Arsenal bias wanting to include Saka somehow. But I feel those 3 just make a really good midfield, as they are their club's main man and everything just goes through them.
So as he said, the key real difference that he's got in here is the triple up in midfield. So Palmer, Salah and Bukayo Saka going through all 3 of those and taking a little bit of money out of the defence. So not really going in on lots of premiums apart from Gvardiol because of the good opening fixtures that he's got, but taking some money out, trying to find those 4.5 million defender gems who might be the ones to get those defensive contribution points. Now, looking at the ones he's got, Wan-Bissaka, Udogie, Konza, I like them, but I'm not sure they're the best for defensive contributions. You could have a look at some of the others, maybe freeing up to go up to 5 million, like an Olorino or Neco Williams at Nottingham Forest, who does rank really highly for these. But I do like that, similar to what my draft has got, but he has freed up money, different to me, from going up from Wirtz to Bukayo Saka. Game week 2, Arsenal at home to Leeds. If you don't own Arsenal players for that fixture, it's going to be a real FOMO, and a lot of people will be using their game week 2 transfers if they don't have Arsenal to go and buy them. So I do love the midfield setup. I would maybe want a little bit more money invested in defense, but this is the joy of FPL this year. We definitely can't own everyone, and we're having to make compromises. So it is a very nice draft from Jack. And then we're actually going to go and have a look at the template and have a look at the most owned players that they have got in their game week 1 drafts at the moment. In goal, they've gone with Kelleher. It was very close between Kelleher and Robert Sanchez. I don't actually think that Kelleher will be the most highly owned goalkeeper once we get to game week 1. I do think Brentford a little bit shaken with the players they've got leaving. Of course, Johan Visser is also linked to leave on top of having Mbermo go. They've lost Damsgaard and they've lost Thomas Frank as well. Not really sure that's where I want to go at the start of the season, but their fixtures are not bad. I do think a Chelsea defender will be popular for game week 1. We just need to make sure that they are back in pre-season early enough to be ready for game week 1 because their fixtures are great, whether it's a Colwill, whether it's a Cucurella, or whether it's Robert Sanchez, who I think will probably be one of the most highly owned goalkeepers going into the start of the season. Kelleher is probably my favourite 4.5, but I do think people will look to free up money. People are going with Darlow as the backup, the 4 million who's currently at Leeds. He ended the season last year in the Championship as Leeds number 1. However, they are really strongly linked with other goalkeepers, so it's unlikely that Darlow will be their first choice going into the season. Then moving into defence, it's quite similar to the draft we saw with Jack, apart from it's slightly different in terms of the actual defenders, but it's one premium. They've gone with Gabriel in here, just backing sort of the Arsenal defence. There's a few people who went with Lewis Skelly, few people went with Saliba, but Gabriel, the most highly owned one. It is worth noting with Gabriel, we don't actually know that he's going to be back for game week 1. He is still having a few setbacks in training during pre-season and he's yet to feature. So I like Gabriel as a pick, but one to keep an eye on in terms of his minutes. And then it's the cheaper ones. Wan-Bissaka, Dukupia, Konza. People also looking at the likes of Anderson at Fulham, looking at the Spurs defenders in there as well. And then the cheap option, Steve at the moment of Burnley. There are a few options, particularly you've got some at Sunderland who are cheap. Also, the right back now at Bournemouth might be starting at 4 million. It's one of those positions we've got to keep an eye on between now and the start of the season because there are lots of options who might be first choice. We've just got to keep our eye on. Then into midfield, it's very similar. There's Ilman and Dye, Palmer, Salah. No room for another premium in there. No Wirtz, no Saka because their ownership is quite split. So a lot of people going with Kudus. I'm not sure his minutes are reliable enough to go with him just yet, but he has looked good in pre-season. And he can rotate really nicely with Morgan Rogers. And the sort of most owned team has gone with Rogers and not gone with Ollie Watkins. So a slightly cheaper Villa attacker. And then the template front line at the moment, I would say 30%, 40% of all the drafts I see have Chris Wood, João Pedro and Dominic Solanke. And about 70% of the drafts I see have at least 2 of them in their starting 11 at the moment. Mo Salah feels like hands down the captaincy option for game week 1 that people are going with. I think this draft also actually leaves 0.5 million in the bank as well. So there is a little bit of flexibility on that. But it's nice, right? You've got a little bit of rotation in defense. You've got Rodgers to sub in. You could, for example, take Rodgers all the way down to a 4.5 million midfielder and upgrade Kudus to I'm not sure if you can get all the way up to Saka, but you could definitely get to a Wirtz, a Marmoush, or someone in that bracket as well. So it depends in that 5th midfielder spot whether you want to rotate. You could go with a cheaper option like Anderson at Nottingham Forest, who we're going to talk about could be a great budget gem this season. But it just depends whether you want the strength and depth that you've got here, because of course you could downgrade Konza to a 4 million and upgrade Dukupia to a Forest defender, or upgrade Wan-Bissaka to Levi Colwill, for example, and go in Chelsea. But there is a sort of template starting to form. Palmer, Salah and Dye is very popular in midfield. Those forwards are very popular, and one premium and some cheap defenders is definitely the way people are going at the moment. And our 20 top 100 managers are definitely going that way as well at the moment. So if you like this video, let me know, because I do plan on doing this again when we get about a week before the start of the season. So if you find it useful, please do let me know in the comments. We of course also have some fancy new graphics on the channel, some fancy new player graphics as well. So please let me know if you like them. It's a big change for me in terms of what the players look like on screen as well. So let me know if you like it. There hopefully will be some more videos. I know it's been a fair few days since I uploaded last. I've had a fantastic week in America for my honeymoon. I've now flown elsewhere, having a lovely time. We arrived a couple of days ago, so settled in, started to get to know the place, get to know our way around. And now I've got a little bit of time to record some videos. So if there's things specific you'd like to see, we'll do a couple more videos this week. And then next weekend, I am back home and we'll have daily videos once I'm home until the start of the season as well. Thank you very much for your patience. We do also have some short form content going out to try and keep things ticking over. I appreciate all the kind words of just saying, Harry, enjoy yourself. I am absolutely doing that. So thank you very much. We'll end it there. I'll go and edit and get myself back on the beach. Thank you all for watching. 2,000 likes is the aim. Subscribe if you're new around here, and I'll be back again very soon.